In the bustling city of Lagos, where tall buildings sparkled under the bright sun and cars filled the busy streets, Nancy lived a life many could only dream of. As the only daughter of Tunde and Yemi, Nancy was cherished in every way. She wore the finest clothes, studied in the best schools, and had everything she could ever wish for. To her parents, she was a precious jewel, adored beyond measure. They showered her with love and made sure she never wanted for anything, always placing her happiness at the center of their lives. Tunde and Yemi adored Nancy so much that they often spoiled her with small surprises, fancy gifts, and endless affection. Her father, Tunde, made sure she learned the value of hard work, yet he never let her struggle or experience any hardship. Her mother, Yemi, spent countless hours with her, sharing laughter and guidance. Together, they planned for her future, dreaming of a wonderful life for her. They imagined her marrying someone from a respected family, someone who could care for her and bring her the happiness she deserved. After careful thought, Tunde and Yemi decided on a suitable match for Anita, a young man from a well-known family, recently returned from studying abroad. This young man, the son of Tunde's old friend, was polite, educated, and came from a background similar to theirs. Tunde was excited, confident that this man would be a perfect match for his beloved daughter. One evening, Tunde and Yemi sat Nancy down in their grand living room, adorned with gold-trimmed furniture and thick, luxurious carpets. Tunde cleared his throat and spoke warmly. "Nancy, my dear, we have something important to discuss with you." Nancy looked up, curious. "Yes, Dad." Yemi smiled gently at her daughter. "We've found a young man we think would make a wonderful husband for you. He's respectful, educated, and from a good family. We want you to meet him." Nancy's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. She took a deep breath, then shook her head. "But I don't want to meet him," she replied firmly. Tunde and Yemi exchanged surprised glances. "Nancy," Tunde said gently, "this young man comes from a good family. He could make you happy." But Nancy's mind was made up. Her heart had already chosen someone else, someone very different from this man her parents had chosen. She had fallen in love with Isaac, their driver. Isaac was kind, gentle, and always treated her with respect. They had shared small, meaningful moments together, little conversations that made her feel understood in a way no one else did. She knew her parents wouldn't approve, but she couldn't deny her feelings. She looked down, gathering her courage, then spoke softly but firmly. "Mom, Dad, I'm already in love with someone." Tunde and Yemi were taken aback. Yemi leaned forward, a look of concern in her eyes. "Who is it, dear?" Nancy hesitated, but then she whispered, "It's Isaac, our driver." The room fell silent, and both Tunde and Yemi stared at her in disbelief. Tunde's face grew stern, and Yemi covered her mouth in shock. Tunde finally spoke, his voice firm. "Nancy, you know that someone like Isaac cannot give you the life you deserve. This is not the kind of future we imagine for you." Nancy's heart pounded, but she met her father's gaze, her voice unwavering. "I don't care about wealth or status, Dad. Isaac respects me, and he makes me feel truly loved. That's all I need." Tunde and Yemi exchanged troubled glances, not knowing how to respond. The days that followed were filled with tension and quiet arguments. Tunde was worried about what people would say, while Yemi feared that Nancy's life with Isaac would be filled with struggles. They wanted her to live a life of comfort and stability, not one of uncertainty and hard work. But Nancy remained firm, insisting that Isaac was the man she truly loved. After days of discussions and sleepless nights, Tunde and Yemi looked at each other and sighed. They could see the determination in their daughter's eyes, and ultimately, they chose to respect her wishes. Even though they had reservations, they decided to support her choice. "If this is truly what you want, Nancy, we won't stand in your way," Tunde said, a hint of sadness in his voice. "But remember, life with Isaac may not be as easy as you think." Despite their concerns, Tunde and Yemi even helped Isaac start a small business, wanting to ensure that Nancy would still have a comfortable life. Isaac worked hard to build the business, and with Tunde's support, it began to grow. Soon, Nancy and Isaac got married, their love filling their days with happiness. At the wedding, Nancy hugged her parents tightly. "Thank you for understanding, Mom, Dad. I know this wasn't easy for you." Yemi smiled, though worry still lingered in her eyes. "We only want you to be happy, my dear." Isaac, dressed in a sharp suit, approached Tunde and Yemi, bowing respectfully. "Thank you for trusting me with Nancy. I promise to take care of her." Tunde nodded, his gaze serious. "We're counting on you, Isaac. Remember, family means everything." Life after the wedding seemed perfect. Nancy and Isaac were happy, and Isaac's business continued to grow. Tunde and Yemi watched from afar, hopeful that they had made the right choice in letting Nancy follow her heart. They took comfort in seeing their daughter's smile and in the love that radiated between her and Isaac. But deep down, Yemi couldn't shake a sense of worry. One evening, she voiced her fears to Tunde. "Do you think Isaac will stay humble, even as his business grows?" Tunde placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He loves Nancy, and that's what matters most. We must have faith in their love." Yemi nodded, trying to ease her heart. Yet, a lingering feeling of unease stayed with her, a quiet fear of what might come. As Nancy and Isaac continued their journey together, Tunde and Yemi chose to be supportive, hiding their worries behind smiles. For many years, Tunde and Yemi had built a strong business that brought them great wealth. Their company was well known in Lagos, and life had been comfortable. But one day, everything took a sudden turn. A trusted employee betrayed them by selling important company information to a competitor. This betrayal was a heavy blow, leaving Tunde and Yemi facing bankruptcy and enormous debts. No matter what they did, the damage couldn't be undone, and their business quickly fell apart. With nowhere else to turn, Tunde and Yemi went to their daughter Nancy and her husband, Isaac, for help. It's been 3 years since they helped Isaac start his own business, and he was now successful and wealthy. Nancy, though surprised by her parents' sudden need, welcomed them into her home, hoping Isaac would be kind and understanding. But Isaac was no longer the gentleman Nancy had once known. Success and wealth had changed him, making him proud and arrogant. Instead of showing compassion, he looked at Tunde and Yemi with disdain, crossing his arms as they explained their situation. "We have lost almost everything, Isaac," Tunde said quietly, humbled by the situation. "We need your support, just until we can find our feet again." Isaac leaned back with a smirk. "Support? Now you come to me? Isn't it funny how tables turn?" He sneered, glancing at them with disdain. Nancy's heart sank. She couldn't believe Isaac would treat her parents this way. She felt a sharp sting of regret, thinking back to the times her parents had gently warned her about marrying him. Now, watching Isaac's coldness toward her parents, she wished she had listened to them. In the following days, the atmosphere grew tenser. Isaac treated Tunde and Yemi with blatant disrespect. He belittled them, often making harsh comments about their failed business and financial situation. One morning, as Yemi was cleaning up after breakfast, Isaac walked in and scoffed. "I didn't know we'd hired new help. Make sure you get the dishes done quickly, Yemi." Yemi's face fell, but she quietly went on with her work. Tunde, witnessing the way Isaac treated his wife, clenched his fists in frustration but held back, unwilling to cause a scene. They had come to their daughter's home for refuge, but now they felt like unwanted intruders. Unable to bear seeing her parents treated so poorly, Nancy finally gathered the courage to confront Isaac one evening. "Isaac, you're being unfair to my parents. They helped you when you had nothing. Can't you show them some respect?" Isaac's expression turned cold as he looked at her. "This is my house, Nancy. I'll do as I please. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave with them." Nancy's voice trembled. "They're my family, Isaac. They don't deserve this treatment." But Isaac dismissed her plea with a harsh glare. "I warned you, Nancy. Stay out of my business or you'll regret it." His tone was sharp, cutting her like a knife. Nancy felt tears well up in her eyes as he turned away without a second glance, leaving her heartbroken and questioning her choices. The man she had once loved, the man she had chosen over her parents' wishes, had become a stranger. He no longer cherished her or treated her with the love and respect he once did. Nancy now saw how drastically Isaac had changed. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by a cold, selfish arrogance. The simple acts of affection that used to fill her life with happiness had faded away, leaving her feeling alone and unloved. Isaac's transformation became increasingly apparent to everyone. He barely acknowledged Nancy, treating her with the same indifference he showed her parents. The joyful, loving days of their marriage seemed like a distant memory. Nancy's heart ached every time she saw her parents' discomfort and helplessness. She would often sit alone, blaming herself, whispering, "If only I'd listened to them, none of this would have happened." The regret weighed on her, and she felt ashamed that her choice had brought such pain to her family. The days turned into weeks, and every moment felt like a silent struggle for Nancy and her parents. They remained in Isaac's house, enduring his scorn and harsh treatment, but each day chipped away at the hope Nancy had once held for a happy life with him. With her heart shattered, she began to wonder if she would ever find peace or reclaim the warmth and love she had sacrificed. One evening, after another argument with Isaac, he made his intentions clear. He brought another woman into their home, a woman who was pregnant with his child. Without caring about Nancy's feelings, he announced to her and her parents, "This is the mother of my child. I want her here, so I'm going to need all of you to leave." Nancy stared at him, her heart breaking into pieces. "Isaac, how could you do this to us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Isaac only shrugged, coldly replying, "I've moved on, Nancy. I want a life with her, not you." With no choice left, Nancy helped her parents gather their belongings. Her parents had once given her the world, but now they were left with nothing. She used the last of her own savings to rent a tiny room for the three of them. As they moved into the small space, Nancy could see the pain in her parents' eyes, but they still tried to comfort her. Tundi placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "We may have lost much, my dear, but we still have each other. You are strong, Nancy, and we'll get through this." In the quiet of their small room, Nancy realized she had no choice but to grow up quickly. She had been pampered all her life, never having to worry about anything. But now, with her parents depending on her, she knew she needed to be strong. She looked at them with a determined smile and said, "I'll find a job, and I'll take care of you both. We don't need Isaac's help." Despite her brave words, a part of Nancy still ached with sadness and regret. She had once believed she was making the right choice by following her heart. Now, she had lost everything: the man she loved, the comfortable life she knew, and even her family's security. But as they settled into their tiny home, a new strength grew within her. She promised herself that she would never let her parents suffer because of her choices again. And though they had lost their wealth, they still had each other, and that would have to be enough. As the night fell, Nancy lay awake, her mind filled with worry, yet laced with determination. She knew that her life had changed forever, but deep down, she held onto a glimmer of hope that they would rise above these trials together. Nancy's life had changed so much. She was no longer the pampered girl who had everything. Now, she had to take care of her parents, and that meant she needed a job. But finding one was harder than she ever imagined. Every morning, she'd leave their tiny room, walk around the busy city streets, and knock on office doors, hoping for work. But each time, she was met with a shake of the head or a polite, "Sorry, we aren't hiring." Days turned into weeks, and each rejection made her feel more hopeless. She missed her old life, but she knew she had to keep going. One hot afternoon, tired and dizzy, Nancy walked along the crowded street. Her legs felt heavy, her vision blurred, and suddenly, everything went dark. She fainted right there, on the side of the road. Just then, a car came to a quick stop nearby. A man stepped out, noticing the young woman lying on the ground. He rushed over, gently lifting her into his car. The man, named Desmond, was calm and careful as he took her to the hospital. When Nancy finally woke up, she found herself in a white room, and a kind face was looking at her. "Are you okay?" Desmond asked, his voice soft. Nancy blinked, slowly sitting up. Where am I?" she whispered, still feeling a bit weak. "You fainted by the roadside. I saw you and couldn't leave you there," Desmond explained. "The doctors say you're okay, just a bit exhausted. Have you been taking care of yourself?" Nancy looked away, feeling a bit embarrassed. I've been looking for a job. My parents and we lost everything," she said quietly, her eyes filling with tears. She hadn't told anyone about her struggles, but there was something in Desmond's kind eyes that made her feel safe. Desmond listened carefully, his face serious. "It sounds like you've been through a lot," he said gently. "What kind of job are you looking for?" "Anything," Nancy replied, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I just want to support my parents. I never thought I'd end up like this." Desmond nodded, thinking for a moment. "Well, I'm actually looking for a personal assistant. I need someone reliable, someone willing to learn. Would you be interested?" Nancy's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You would give me a job?" Desmond, too, looked slightly taken aback by his own words, almost surprised that he had just offered such an important role to someone he'd only just met. But something in Nancy's honesty and determination struck him deeply, and despite the unusual nature of his decision, he decided to follow his instinct. "Yes," he said, smiling, "but it won't be easy. There's a lot to learn, and I need someone who can keep up with me. Do you think you can do that? Nancy nodded eagerly. Yes, I can. I'll work hard, I promise. Overjoyed, Nancy thanked Desmond, feeling like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. When she returned home that evening, she rushed into their small room and hugged her parents tightly. "Mama, Papa, I got a job!" she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. Tunde and Yemi looked at each other, relief and joy on their faces. Yemi took Nancy's hands in hers, smiling through tears. "Oh, Nancy, we're so proud of you." The next day, Nancy started her new job with Desmond. She had no experience, but Desmond was patient with her, showing her how to organize files, answer calls, and handle paperwork. He could see her determination, and he admired how hard she worked. She was no longer the pampered girl she once was. Nancy was learning to be strong and independent. Days turned into weeks, and Nancy's confidence grew. She became more skilled, handling tasks with ease. Desmond often took her along to meetings and trips, trusting her to assist him. They worked closely, and a friendship slowly blossomed between them. Nancy didn't know much about Desmond's past, but she could tell he was a good man. He listened to her, encouraged her, and made her feel like she was truly capable of doing great things. One evening, as they were working late, Nancy turned to him and asked, "Desmond, why did you help me that day?" Desmond paused, looking thoughtful. "Sometimes we come across people who need a little kindness. You seemed like someone who just needed a chance, Nancy." Nancy smiled, feeling grateful. "Thank you for believing in me." Desmond nodded, his eyes warm. "You're stronger than you think, Nancy. And remember, you're not alone in this journey." With Desmond's help and her own hard work, Nancy started to rebuild her life. Her parents saw the change in her too. She was no longer the girl who needed protection. She was now a strong young woman, taking care of her family. And with each passing day, Nancy grew closer to Desmond, admiring his strength and kindness. But little did she know, Desmond had his own story, one that would soon connect to hers in ways she never expected. For now, though, Nancy was happy to have found a friend in him, not knowing the twists that fate still had in store. Nancy and Desmond's friendship had grown into something much deeper. They enjoyed spending time together, and their days were filled with laughter and hard work. Desmond admired Nancy's strength, while Nancy found comfort and kindness in Desmond's presence. Eventually, they both realized they had fallen in love. One evening, Nancy decided it was time to introduce Desmond to her parents. She felt a little nervous, but she was also excited. "Mama, Papa, I have someone special I want you to meet," she said, looking at Tunde and Yemi with a shy smile. Tunde and Yemi glanced at each other, curious about who this person could be. When Desmond walked into their small apartment, they both froze, their eyes widening in shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. This was the same man they had once hoped Nancy would marry. Desmond noticed their surprised faces and looked at them with a gentle smile. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" he said softly, his eyes full of warmth. Tunde cleared his throat, finally finding his voice. "Desmond, we never expected to see you again," he said, glancing at Yemi, who nodded, still looking stunned. Nancy looked between Desmond and her parents, confused. "Wait, you all know each other?" she asked, her eyes widening as she turned to Desmond. Desmond nodded. "Yes, Nancy. Years ago, your parents thought it would be a good idea for us to meet. They wanted us to get to know each other, but back then things didn't work out." He turned to Tunde and asked, "Why didn't you reach out to me when things became difficult?" Tunde sighed, rubbing his hands together. "We didn't reach out to you during our tough times because we felt embarrassed," he admitted, looking down. "After Nancy married Isaac, we didn't want to bother you." Yemi spoke up, her voice filled with regret. "We didn't want to ask for help, Desmond. We thought it would be wrong to reach out, especially after everything with Isaac." Nancy's face turned red as she realized the truth. She looked down, ashamed of her past decisions. All this time, she hadn't known who Desmond really was, or how much he had meant to her parents. She felt tears well up in her eyes. "Desmond, I didn't know," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I was so stubborn back then. I didn't listen to my parents." Desmond reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "Nancy, everyone makes mistakes. What matters now is where we go from here," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I didn't know all the pain you went through, but I'm here now, and I still care for you." Tunde and Yemi watched, their eyes shining with relief and joy. They had once wished for this moment, but they had never thought it would actually come true. Seeing Desmond hold their daughter's hands and speak so kindly to her filled them with hope. Nancy looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. She hugged Desmond tightly, letting the tears she had held back finally fall. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for standing by me and my family, even after everything." Desmond smiled, patting her back gently. "You're not alone, Nancy. We'll get through everything together," he said reassuringly. Tunda cleared his throat, a big smile spreading across his face. "Desmond, I can't tell you how happy we are to have you here. We always knew you were a good man." Yemi nodded, her face glowing with happiness. "You've brought so much hope back into our lives. Thank you, Desmond." Desmond looked at Tunde and Yemi, nodding respectfully. "I'll do my best to make things right for all of us. We've all been through a lot, but I believe there's a brighter future ahead." As the evening went on, they all shared stories and laughter, the room filled with warmth and love. It was as if all the pain and struggles had faded, replaced by hope and new beginnings. Nancy felt grateful, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. But deep down, Nancy knew there was still a long road ahead. Though she and Desmond had found each other, they both had wounds to heal and challenges to face. Yet, surrounded by her parents and with Desmond by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. They all agreed that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together as a family. The night ended with renewed hope, each of them carrying a spark of joy in their hearts. And as Desmond held Nancy's hand, he knew he had found something truly special, a love and family he was ready to protect and cherish forever. Nancy and Desmond's love grew stronger with each passing day. They shared laughter, dreams, and hopes, and soon decided it was time to get married. They wanted a small, simple ceremony with only those who mattered most. It was a quiet celebration of their love, a new beginning that brought peace to both their hearts. On the wedding day, Nancy wore a lovely dress, her face glowing with happiness. Desmond looked proud and joyful, his eyes shining as he held her hand. Tunde and Yemi sat proudly in the front row, watching their daughter and the man they had always hoped would bring her happiness. As the ceremony began, Tunde whispered to Yemi, "Our daughter has finally found her true happiness." Yemi smiled, wiping a tear from her eye, her heart full of joy. After the wedding, Desmond approached Tunde with a gentle smile. "I want to help you rebuild your business, sir," he said respectfully. "I know you're strong and hardworking, and I want to support you in building something you'll be proud of." Tunde was taken aback, feeling both surprised and touched. "Thank you, Desmond," he replied, deeply moved. "This means so much to me. I promise I'll make it work." With Desmond's guidance, Tunde began his new business. Desmond shared his knowledge and connections, helping Tunde at every step. Slowly, the business grew, and Tunde found joy in working again. Eventually, he decided to pass it on to Nancy and Desmond, trusting them to carry on his hard work. "Thank you for everything," Tunde told Desmond one day. "You've given us so much hope and happiness. You're truly like a son to us." Desmond smiled, his heart filled with gratitude. "It's an honor to be a part of this family," he said sincerely. Nancy and Desmond's joy multiplied when, a year later, they welcomed a beautiful baby daughter into their lives. They named her Lillian, a name that brought smiles and happiness to everyone in the family. Little Lillian brought even more warmth to their home, filling their days with laughter and love. Tunde and Yemi adored their granddaughter, and their hearts felt complete seeing their daughter's happiness grow in this new chapter of her life. Meanwhile, things took a dark turn for Isaac. After he threw Nancy and her parents out, he continued spending recklessly, confident that his money would never run out. He threw grand parties, bought expensive things, and lived as if he was untouchable. His new mistress, who had quickly settled into his home, encouraged his reckless spending. One evening, Isaac sat with his new mistress, talking about his big plans. "Soon, I'll be even richer," he boasted, unaware of how much trouble he was actually in. But without Tunde's guidance, Isaac's business began to fall apart. He lost clients, made poor choices, and ignored warnings. His wealth began to slip away, little by little, until one day he found himself in deep financial trouble. His mistress, noticing his financial troubles, grew distant and cold. Isaac brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress, but one day he woke up to find her gone. She had left him a short note on the empty dresser. As he read it, his hands began to shake. The note read, "Isaac, I never loved you. I was only with you for the money. I was never pregnant. My boyfriend and I made up the whole story to get your money. You were so easy to fool. I'm leaving, goodbye." Isaac's heart sank. He couldn't believe it. The woman he thought he loved, who he had planned a life with, had tricked him all along. His eyes darted to his safe, where he kept his last bit of savings, but it was empty. She had taken everything and disappeared, leaving him with nothing but regret. What? How could she do this? He stammered, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal. He had thrown away everything good in his life, only to be left with emptiness. As the weeks passed, Isaac's despair grew. He was forced to confront the choices he had made, realizing he had lost his family, his fortune, and the people who truly cared for him. Isaac's life had turned upside down. Once a proud man with everything he thought he wanted, he was now reduced to a shadow of himself. His savings were gone, his dignity was gone, and even his dreams had faded. His properties and house were taken by the bank to clear his debts. He was back to square one. He walked the streets aimlessly, looking for anything that could help him survive. He finally found work as a laborer on a construction site. The pay was low, the work was hard, but it was all he had left. His days were filled with lifting heavy blocks and working under the hot sun, all while thinking about how far he had fallen. One morning, the site manager gathered all the workers and made an announcement. "Today, the building's owner and his wife will be visiting. I want everything in order. Let's make a good impression." Isaac wiped the sweat from his brow and barely listened, his mind consumed with the drudgery of the work. But then, he heard a car's engine roar in the distance, and the workers began to stir. Isaac looked up, his heart suddenly racing. The car pulled up, and out stepped a man and a woman. Isaac froze. There was no mistaking them. The man was tall and handsome, dressed sharply in a suit. His smile was confident, and his posture was perfect. It was Desmond. The woman standing next to him was graceful, glowing with beauty and elegance. It was Nancy. She was dressed in a lovely outfit that made her look radiant, like a vision out of reach, just as she had seemed those years ago when he was merely a driver for her family. Now she was even more stunning, happiness shining in her eyes. Isaac's stomach twisted. How had he ended up here, while Nancy was living such a good life? He felt a wave of shame wash over him, shrinking from their sight. He quickly moved back, hiding himself within the crowd of workers, hoping they wouldn't notice him. As Nancy and Desmond walked onto the site, the workers around Isaac began to whisper excitedly. "Did you know Desmond is one of the richest men in the city? And he really treats his wife well," one worker said. "Look at her, she's glowing with happiness," another worker added. Isaac could hardly bear to hear it. Every word felt like a reminder of the life he could have had but threw away. As he watched from the shadows, he noticed the way Desmond looked at Nancy, with pure love and deep respect. It was clear to anyone watching how much Desmond cherished her, and Nancy's happiness radiated in her smile. Isaac stayed where he was, his face flushed with guilt and regret. Nancy and Desmond moved through the crowd, hand in hand, talking with the workers as if they were family. When they passed by Isaac's spot, he sank further into the crowd, hoping they wouldn't see him. But Nancy looked so happy, so fulfilled, that she seemed to overlook everyone else around her. He thought about the years he had worked for Nancy's family, how they had treated him with kindness, how close he had once been to her. He remembered how he had cast all of it aside for his pride and greed. Now, the sight of Nancy with Desmond filled him with a painful emptiness. As they continued their tour of the site, Isaac stood in the shadows, trembling. He could see how Desmond's support and care had transformed Nancy's life. He saw how, in every gesture and every glance, they truly belonged together. His mind replayed the choices he had made, leading him to this moment, and he realized that he had no one to blame but himself. "Is everything okay?" one of the workers asked, noticing Isaac's troubled expression. Isaac forced a smile. "Yes, just thinking." But he knew there was nothing more to think about. He had ruined his own life. Isaac lived the rest of his days working odd jobs, barely getting by. The regret and bitterness never left him. Every time he heard news of how Nancy and Desmond's family prosper from a distance, he was reminded of the life he could have led. As the years passed, Isaac's life remained bleak and lonely. He often thought about the road not taken, about how things could have been different if he had chosen love over pride. But he knew that it was too late now, and all he had left was a life filled with remorse. In the end, fate had dealt him a harsh hand, one that he realized he had chosen himself. His life now served as a reminder that sometimes The things we take for granted are the ones we can never get back, and that once they're gone forever. Thanks for watching, dear viewers. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in our next video.